I was ready to divorce my wife until I heard her secret girl talk about me. I had the divorce papers printed out and sitting on my desk for exactly 17 days before I decided to sign them. 17 days of walking past them every morning. 17 days of picking them up, reading the first paragraph, and then setting them back down again. 17 days of standing in my home office in Houston, Texas, looking at a document that would end 11 years of marriage, and trying to convince myself that this was the right choice. My name is Marcus. I'm 41 years old. And I had spent the last 3 years of my marriage believing one very specific thing. I believed that the woman I loved had stopped loving me back. I believed that we had become strangers living in the same house, existing in separate silences, maintaining the appearance of a life together while actually building separate futures apart. I believed that staying would only cause more damage, more pain, more of the slow erosion that happens when two people decide, without ever speaking about it directly, that protecting themselves is more important than protecting the marriage. The papers were sitting on my desk on a Wednesday evening in November. I'd gotten them from my attorney 3 weeks earlier. She'd been patient with me, understanding. She'd said, "Take your time, Marcus. This is a big decision. But don't take so long that indecision becomes the decision. At some point, you have to choose." So I'd set a date. November 15th. That was when I would sign them. My wife's name was Sarah. She worked in marketing for a tech company downtown. We'd met in college at the University of Houston. She was brilliant, sharp, ambitious in the way that made you want to be around her because her energy lifted everything it touched. At least, that's who she was when I married her. Somewhere in the last 3 years, I'd lost track of who she'd become. We lived in a beautiful house in the Bellaria neighborhood. 4 bedrooms, marble countertops, the kind of place that looked perfect in photographs but felt hollow when you were living inside it. We had stopped having conversations around year 2 of this particular version of our marriage. Not because we didn't have anything to say, but because everything we might have said felt dangerous. So instead, we existed in this careful politeness where we asked about each other's work but didn't really listen to the answers. Where we slept in the same bed but never touched. Where we sat in the same room but looked at different screens. 3 months earlier, I'd tried to break through it. I'd suggested marriage counseling. Sarah had said she didn't think there was anything to counsel. She'd said it the way you might say the weather is nice. Just a statement of fact. Delivered without emotion, without hope, without any indication that she believed anything could change. So I'd stopped trying. I'd accepted that this was what marriage looked like in year 11. 2 people who loved each other at one point in time and had somehow managed to grow entirely incompatible. That's when I started thinking about divorce. Not because I wanted it, but because it seemed like the only rational response to an irrational situation. We were both unhappy. The marriage was dead. Why keep maintaining the corpse? Why not just let it go and give each other a chance to find something real with someone else? So I'd called my attorney, Colleen Martinez. Sharp as a knife. No patience for bullshit. She'd walked me through the process with the efficiency of someone who'd done it 1,000 times before. Texas is a community property state, she'd explained. Everything acquired during the marriage is split 50-50. You've got no kids, so that simplifies things. There's no custody battle. Just the division of assets and debts. She'd drawn up the papers. I'd reviewed them. Everything was fair. Sarah would get the house. I'd get the investment portfolio I'd built before we married. We'd split everything else down the middle. It was clean. It was simple. It was the kind of divorce that could be finalized in a matter of months if we both agreed to the terms without fighting. But something had stopped me from signing those papers. Every time I'd sat down at my desk with a pen in my hand, every time I'd gotten to that first signature line, my hand had simply refused to move. My attorney had said, "Marcus, I understand this is difficult. But you need to make a decision. You're paying me to hold these papers and wait for you to commit. So here's what I want you to do. Set a date. Make it final. Sign the papers or don't, but make the choice either way. November 15th. That was the date I chose. That was the moment when I would either sign my name at the bottom of that document, or I would stop the whole process and try one more time with Sarah. I didn't know which one I wanted, but I knew I couldn't exist in this limbo anymore. The uncertainty was worse than any outcome. The night before my deadline, I came home early from work. Sarah's car was already in the garage. She was home. We rarely saw each other during the day anymore. Our schedules had somehow managed to completely misalign. She left for work before I woke up. I came home after she'd already retreated to her office or her bedroom. We were living in the same house like we were living in different cities. I made coffee. The kind of coffee she used to like. Before everything went quiet. Before we stopped trying. I carried it upstairs to her office. The door was open about 3 inches. I could see her sitting at her desk, her back to the doorway, her phone pressed to her ear. She was talking to someone. Her best friend, Rebecca, from the sound of it. They'd been close since college. Rebecca was one of the few people Sarah still made time for. I was about to knock. I was about to ask her if she wanted coffee. I was about to try, one more time, to bridge the gap between us. But then I heard something that stopped me completely. Sarah was crying. Not quiet crying. The kind where you're holding it in because you're supposed to stay composed. But real crying. The kind where your whole body shakes and you can barely get the words out. The kind of crying that only happens when you're alone with someone you trust completely. When there's no performance left to maintain. I should have left. I should have backed away from that open door and pretended I hadn't seen anything. I should have respected her privacy and let her have this moment with her best friend without being witnessed. But I didn't do any of those things. I stood there in the hallway with the coffee cup still warm in my hands and I listened. I swear to God, Rebecca. Rebecca's voice came through the phone speaker. I'm losing him. And I don't even know when it started. I just looked up one day and realized he was gone. Not physically, but in every way that matters, he's already left. Sarah's voice was raw, broken. Nothing like the careful, controlled tone she'd been using with me for years. I haven't told him any of it. I don't know how. Every time I try to say something real, I get scared. I get scared that he'll realize he deserves better. I get scared that I'm too broken to fix. So instead I just let him slip further away and I pretend it's what I want. Like if I never ask him to fight for this marriage, then the ending won't hurt so much. I felt something shift inside my chest. A cold current. A sudden clarity. The coffee cup in my hands started to shake. I set it down on the hallway table before I dropped it. She kept talking. Her voice getting louder as she cried harder. Rebecca, I wake up every morning and I think about how to start a conversation that might save this. And then I remember that we've been trying so hard not to talk to each other for so long that I don't even know how to begin anymore. I don't know how to tell him that the reason I've been so cold is because I've been so scared. Scared of asking for what I need. Scared of being rejected. Scared of being a burden. I stood in the hallway completely still. Every assumption I'd built about Sarah's feelings was collapsing. I'd been convinced that she'd stopped caring. That she'd moved on emotionally. That she was ready for this marriage to end. But what I was hearing through that 3-inch gap was something entirely different. I was hearing the sound of a woman who was drowning. Who had been drowning for so long that she'd stopped believing anyone would reach for her hand. Rebecca said something I couldn't quite make out. And then Sarah's response came through, and it stopped everything. The thing that kills me most is that he's so quiet about everything. He doesn't fight. He doesn't push back. He just accepts whatever distance I create and then steps further back himself. It's like he's given up on me without ever actually telling me that's what he's doing. And I don't blame him. I've made it so clear that I don't want to be reached that of course he stopped reaching. I pressed my forehead against the doorframe. Every word was landing like a physical blow. Because I hadn't given up on her. I hadn't accepted the distance and retreated. I'd been devastated by the distance. I'd been trying to protect myself from the pain of having someone you love live in the same house like you're invisible. I'd been building walls because I thought she'd already built hers first. But maybe I'd been wrong. Rebecca was saying something supportive now. I could hear the caring in her tone even though I couldn't catch all the words. And then Sarah's response came through like a confession. You know what the worst part is? The worst part is that I'm pretty sure he's with someone else now. Or at least, that's the excuse I've been using in my head to justify why I've been pulling away so hard. I convinced myself that if I could just let him go easily, then the pain of him choosing someone else wouldn't destroy me. I felt my knees weaken. Another man. That was the story I'd been telling myself. That I was with someone else. I wasn't. I'd never even looked at another woman. I'd been so consumed with trying to figure out how to save my marriage that I hadn't thought about anything else. But Sarah had invented this entire narrative. She'd convinced herself that I was already gone. And in convincing herself of that, she'd made it true. She'd made sure that I would have no choice but to leave. Psychologists call this a self-fulfilling prophecy. When a person believes something is true about a situation, they unconsciously alter their behavior in ways that make that belief come true. Sarah had believed I was pulling away. So she'd pulled away first. I'd responded to her pulling away by pulling away myself. And in that dance of mutual retreat, we'd created exactly the outcome she'd feared. She was still talking. Her voice getting quieter now, more resigned. So tomorrow I'm just going to accept it. I'm going to let him sign whatever papers his attorney prepared. I'm going to let him go. Because staying is just causing us both more pain. And at least if I'm the one who lets go first, it won't feel like I was abandoned. There was a long pause. Then Rebecca's voice came through again, saying something I couldn't quite make out. But Sarah's response was clear. No. I'm not going to tell him. What's the point? The damage is done. We're already so far apart that the truth won't bring us back. It'll just make the ending worse. I stood there in the hallway for a very long time after she hung up. I don't know how long. Minutes. Hours. Time felt different. The coffee on the hallway table grew cold. The house was completely silent except for the sound of my own breathing, which felt too loud in that silence. I had planned to sign the divorce papers tomorrow. I had made that decision. I had committed to it. And now I was standing here, listening to the sound of my wife crying in her office, understanding for the first time that we'd been making the same mistake in two different ways. I thought about the past 3 years. I thought about all the moments I'd misinterpreted as disinterest when they might have been fear. All the moments I'd seen as rejection when they might have been self-protection. All the moments I'd decided were proof that the marriage was dead when they might have actually been proof that we were both terrified of losing each other. I walked downstairs and threw the divorce papers in the fireplace. I didn't burn them. I just set them on the hearth where they sat, 3 pages of my life ending, stacked neatly like something disposable. Then I sat on the couch in the dark living room and waited for Sarah to come down. I didn't know what I was going to say. I didn't know how to translate what I'd just heard into words that wouldn't make her feel violated or exposed or ashamed. I just knew that I couldn't sign those papers tomorrow. Not when I finally understood that the reason she'd been pulling away wasn't because she'd stopped loving me. It was because she was terrified I'd stopped loving her. An hour later, Sarah came downstairs. She saw the divorce papers on the fireplace. She saw me sitting on the couch in the dark. For a moment, she froze. I watched her face go through about 6 different expressions. Confusion. Realization. Fear. Understanding. Then she sat down beside me without saying anything. And we stayed like that for a very long time. 2 people who'd been drowning in silence, finally understanding that the other person had been drowning the entire time too. Sarah spoke first. Her voice was small, careful, like she was testing whether it was safe to be honest. How long were you standing at my office door? The question wasn't accusatory. It was just asking for facts. And I gave them to her. I heard most of it, I said. I heard you talking to Rebecca. I heard what you said about me, about us. She didn't try to explain it away. She didn't make excuses. She just nodded slowly and looked down at her hands. "I'm so sorry." Those were the words she led with. Not an explanation. Not a defense. Just an apology for letting me believe something that wasn't true. For creating a distance between us instead of trying to bridge it. For deciding that protecting herself was more important than protecting us. I asked her something that I'd been afraid to ask for years. "Why didn't you just tell me? Why didn't you just say that you were scared? Why didn't you fight for this instead of letting it die quietly?" She was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that changed everything about how I understood the past 3 years. Because I was convinced that if I told you how much I needed you, you'd realize you could do better. I was convinced that need is a form of weakness. That wanting something desperately makes you vulnerable. That if I ever admitted how much this marriage meant to me, you'd see that clearly and you'd leave. So I pushed you away first. I made myself smaller so that the eventual rejection wouldn't hurt as much. What Sarah was describing is what psychologists call anxious attachment. It's a pattern that develops when someone learns early on that their needs are burdensome. That expressing vulnerability is dangerous. That the only way to survive is to protect yourself by never letting anyone get too close. So instead of asking for what you need, you spend your energy pushing people away before they can hurt you. I had spent 3 years interpreting Sarah's distance as evidence that she didn't care about me. But the truth was the opposite. She cared so much that she was terrified. She cared so much that she'd convinced herself the only rational response was to make sure I left before she had to. "Marcus," she said, "if you still want to sign those papers, I won't stop you. I've made peace with the ending. But if there's any part of you that wants to stay, if there's any part of you that wants to try something different, I need you to know that I never stopped wanting you. I just forgot how to tell you." I looked at my wife. Really looked at her. I saw the woman I'd married underneath all the distance and fear and self-protection. I saw the brilliance that had first attracted me to her. I saw the capacity for love that had terrified her so much that she'd spent 3 years running from it. I didn't sign those papers that day, or the day after that. Instead, I made a phone call. I found a marriage therapist. Her name was Dr. Amelia Chen. She'd specialized in working with couples who'd built walls so high they'd forgotten how to see each other across them. I called her office and made an appointment for the following week. When I told Sarah what I'd done, she didn't celebrate. She didn't say, "Great, let's fix this." She said something much more honest. "What if we've been broken too long? What if the damage is too deep to repair? What if this is just prolonging the inevitable?" And I understood in that moment that Sarah's fear wasn't just about being rejected. It was about hoping. Because hope is terrifying. Hope means believing that things could be different. And if you believe things could be different and then they don't become different, the pain is worse than if you'd never hoped at all. But I'd learned something standing in that hallway listening to her cry. I'd learned that the distance between us wasn't because we'd stopped loving each other. It was because we'd both been so focused on protecting ourselves that we'd forgotten how to protect us. We'd forgotten that a marriage isn't something you maintain alone. It's something you build together. And when you're both retreating at the same time, both protecting yourself at the same time, both assuming the worst about the other person at the same time, you end up with exactly what we had. Two people living separate lives under the same roof. The first therapy session was painful. Dr. Chen had us sit across from each other and she asked us to tell each other one thing we needed to say that we'd been too afraid to say. Sarah went first. She looked directly at me and she said, "I need you to know that I've been terrified every single day that you were going to leave. And instead of telling you that, instead of asking you to stay, I pushed you away so that when you eventually did leave, it would feel like my choice instead of a rejection." Then I told her the truth. I said, "I need you to know that I've spent the last 3 years believing you didn't want me anymore. And instead of fighting for this, instead of trying harder to reach you, I accepted your distance and I turned it into evidence that I'd been right to protect myself all along. I created the ending I was afraid of by refusing to believe that we could be different." Dr. Chen let us sit with that for a moment. Then she said something that would become the foundation of everything that came after. The marriages that fail aren't the ones where people have problems. Every marriage has problems. The marriages that fail are the ones where people stop believing that the other person is worth fighting for. The ones where fear becomes bigger than hope. What I'm hearing from both of you is that you never stopped believing in each other. You just forgot how to say it out loud. We went to therapy every week for 6 months. Every session was difficult. We were essentially relearning how to be honest with each other. Relearning how to say the things we'd been too afraid to say. Relearning how to believe that vulnerability wasn't weakness. That asking for what you need isn't selfish. That loving someone completely means being willing to be hurt by them if that's the risk you have to take. One of the exercises Dr. Chen had us do was write down one sacrifice we'd made for this marriage that we'd never told the other person about. The things we'd given up without being asked. The things we'd carried silently. Sarah wrote about the promotion she'd turned down 2 years earlier because it required 60% travel, and she'd been terrified that if she left me alone for that long, I'd finally realize that I could do better without her. She'd killed her own career to keep me from having the space to leave. She'd literally limited her own potential because she was so convinced I would abandon her if given the opportunity. I wrote about the friendship I'd ended because my friend had made a comment about Sarah being cold to me, and I'd interpreted that comment as him siding with me against my wife. So I'd shut him out completely. I'd isolated myself from anyone who might validate the narrative I was telling myself about our marriage failing. I'd literally removed myself from my support system because I was so convinced the marriage was over that I didn't want anyone telling me otherwise. When we shared these things with each other, Dr. Chen asked us the same question. Why didn't you tell him? Why didn't you tell her? And our answers were the same. Because I didn't want him to feel guilty. Because I didn't want her to think she needed to save me. Because I thought that the more I kept to myself, the less burden I'd be on you. Dr. Chen explained to us what psychologists call invisible sacrifice syndrome. It's when people in a relationship make enormous sacrifices for each other but never tell the other person about them. So instead of the sacrifice creating gratitude and connection, it creates resentment and distance. Because the person who made the sacrifice feels unappreciated, and the person who benefited from the sacrifice doesn't even know it happened. So Sarah believed she was protecting me by turning down that promotion. But what I experienced was her seeming disengaged from her career, which I interpreted as her disengaging from life, which made me believe she was depressed or unhappy, which made me believe I was making her unhappy, which made me believe the marriage should end. Meanwhile, Sarah was making this enormous sacrifice and I was interpreting it as evidence of her indifference. When in reality, she was doing it because she loved me so much that she was willing to derail her own life to keep me. About 4 months into therapy, we had a conversation that would become the turning point. We were sitting on our back patio on a Saturday morning. The sun was just coming up. The neighborhood was still quiet. Sarah said, "I've been thinking about what would have happened if you'd signed those papers. If we'd actually gone through with the divorce." I said, "What would have happened?" She said, "I would have spent the rest of my life believing that I was unlovable. That I'd driven away the one person who mattered to me most. That the reason the marriage failed was because I wasn't worth fighting for. I would have made our ending mean something about my value as a person instead of understanding it as just two people who got scared at the same time." Then she looked at me and said, "Thank God you listened through that open door. Thank God you didn't respect my privacy in that one moment. Because if you had, I would have let you walk away thinking that I didn't care about this marriage. And you would have spent the rest of your life believing that you were the only one trying. And neither of us would have known the truth." What Sarah was describing is what therapists call the protective power of vulnerability. When you're willing to be seen, really seen, by another person, you give them the opportunity to understand you in ways that aren't possible when you're performing. When you're pretending everything is fine. When you're protecting yourself by appearing distant. We didn't fix everything in those 6 months. We didn't suddenly become the couple we'd been before things got difficult. But we became something different. We became a couple that knew how to say hard things. That understood how to ask for what we needed. That believed, finally, that the other person was worth fighting for. By month 6, Dr. Chen said something that surprised both of us. "I don't think you need me anymore. You've learned how to do the thing that most couples never figure out. You've learned how to choose each other actively, not just by staying in the marriage, but by choosing to be honest, by choosing to be vulnerable, by choosing to believe in each other even when fear is telling you to protect yourself." We still go to therapy. Once a month now instead of every week. We still struggle. We still have moments where old patterns try to reassert themselves. But there's a difference now. Now when fear comes up, we recognize it for what it is. We recognize it as a lie we're telling ourselves instead of as the truth about the other person. I never did sign those divorce papers. They sat in a drawer in my office for 3 months after I threw them on the fireplace and then moved them to safety. Then one day, I opened that drawer and I shredded them. I didn't do it ceremonially. I didn't make a big moment out of it. I just fed them one by one into my shredder and I watched them get destroyed. That act of destruction was more powerful than signing them would have been. Because signing those papers would have been an ending. Shredding them was a choice to keep fighting. A choice to believe that the marriage was worth saving. A choice to believe in Sarah. A choice to believe in us. A year after I first heard Sarah crying in her office, we were sitting on the back patio again. Spring had come around again. The same season that had prompted me to print out those divorce papers now felt different. It felt alive. It felt like possibility instead of ending. Sarah was reading a book. I was just watching the neighborhood wake up. And she said something that made me understand how far we'd come. I was thinking about what would have happened if you'd signed those papers. Not in a sad way, but in a grateful way. Because I realized that I would never have fought for myself. I would have just accepted the ending and I would have spent my life believing that I was unlovable. But something changed when you heard me talking to Rebecca. Something shifted in how I understood myself. Because I realized that the person I was so scared to show you was actually the person you'd been trying to reach the whole time. I was so convinced that my neediness would drive you away that I never let you see how much I needed you. I asked her if she regretted it. All those years of distance. All that time we could have been connected but weren't. She said, "I regret the time we lost. But I don't regret the person I became by losing it. Because I had to lose you to understand how much I needed you. I had to face the possibility of losing you to understand that protecting myself was actually destroying us." Psychologists call this post-traumatic growth. It's not about bouncing back to where you were before the crisis. It's about arriving somewhere genuinely new. With more clarity, more self-knowledge, a more honest understanding of what you actually need and what you're actually worth. Our marriage isn't perfect now. We still disagree. We still have moments where old patterns try to show up. But we have something better than perfect. We have real. We have honest. We have the understanding that love isn't about never having problems. It's about believing that the other person is worth solving problems with. Sarah went back to school. She's getting her MBA. The promotion she turned down years ago came around again, and this time she took it. I told her, "You turned it down once because you were scared I'd leave if you were too ambitious. But what I actually need is to see you becoming the fullest version of yourself. I need to see you chasing what you want. Because that's what I fell in love with. That fire. That ambition. That belief that you could build something meaningful." She cried when I said that. Not sad tears. The kind of tears that come when someone finally sees you the way you've always needed to be seen. The way you've always believed you should be seen if only someone would look hard enough. About 18 months after I first heard her crying, we had another moment that mattered. We were in our bedroom at night. The lights were off. And Sarah said, "I owe you an apology. For making you feel like you had to be small in this marriage. For letting you believe that my distance was about you when it was really about my own fear." I said, "I owe you an apology too. For not fighting harder. For accepting the distance instead of pushing back against it. For letting fear convince me that the ending was inevitable when I could have chosen to believe in us instead. She said, "What if we decided right now that we're never going to make that mistake again? What if we decided that whenever fear comes up, we're going to talk about it instead of letting it build walls?" I said, "I think that's the best decision we could possibly make." And that's what we've done. It's not perfect. Some days we still struggle. Some days the old patterns still try to reassert themselves. But now when they do, we recognize them. We talk about them. We choose to be honest instead of choosing to be safe. 2 years after I threw those divorce papers on the fireplace, Sarah and I renewed our vows. Not in a big ceremony, just in our backyard with a few close friends. But it meant something. It meant that we were choosing this. We were choosing each other. Not because we had to, but because we wanted to. Because we understood, finally, that the hardest part of a marriage isn't the good moments. The hardest part is choosing to show up during the difficult moments. Choosing to be honest. Choosing to believe in the other person even when your fear is telling you to protect yourself. I want to leave you with something that I wish someone had told me during those years when everything was falling apart. The silence in a marriage is never actually silent. It's full of conversations you're not having. It's full of needs you're not expressing. It's full of fear you're not naming. And when you finally break that silence, when you finally say the things you've been too afraid to say, you discover that the person you've been so scared of losing has been just as scared as you have been the entire time. Here's what I need you to do. Tonight, after dinner, before the television comes on and the evening slips away, find your partner. Look them directly in the eyes. And ask them this one question. What's something you've been too afraid to tell me? And then listen. Really listen. Don't defend yourself. Don't explain your perspective. Just listen to what they need you to know. Because the marriages that survive aren't the ones that never have problems. The marriages that survive are the ones where people decide that honesty is more important than comfort. Vulnerability is more important than protection. And showing your true self to another person, even when that's terrifying, is worth the risk. 3 years after that night when I stood in the hallway listening to Sarah cry, we were sitting in Dr. Chen's office for what would be our last scheduled therapy session. We'd moved to once-a-month check-ins about a year and a half earlier, and now we were at a place where we felt confident enough to graduate completely. Dr. Chen asked us, "If you could go back and tell yourself something at the beginning of this journey, what would you say?" Sarah went first. She said, "I would tell myself that needing someone isn't weakness. I would tell myself that being honest about that need is the strongest thing you can possibly do. I would tell myself that the person you're afraid will leave you is probably just as afraid that you're going to leave them. And I would tell myself that the only way to find out if someone is worth fighting for is to actually fight for them instead of giving up before the fight even starts." Then I spoke. I said, I would tell myself that the quiet isn't always peace. Sometimes the quiet is actually heartbreak that nobody's talking about. Sometimes the distance isn't because the other person doesn't care. It's because they're terrified. And instead of assuming the worst, instead of protecting yourself by pulling away first, you have to find the courage to reach toward them. Even when you're scared. Especially when you're scared. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. She said, "What you're both describing is something that most couples never figure out. Most relationships end because people choose their fear over their love. They choose protection over vulnerability. They choose the safety of being alone over the risk of being truly seen. But you two chose something different. You chose to believe that the other person was worth the risk." Over the next year, things in our life continued to shift. Sarah got that promotion. She was traveling, but now it was different because we'd learned how to communicate across distance. We'd learned how to check in, how to share what was really happening instead of just sharing the highlights. I started a new position at my company. I was taking on more responsibility, putting myself out there more. And Sarah was my biggest cheerleader. She would read my proposals before I sent them. She would listen to me work through difficult decisions. She was present in a way that she hadn't been during those years when everything was quiet and broken. About 4 months after we stopped regular therapy sessions, we were having dinner at our favorite restaurant. The same restaurant where we'd first met, actually, though we hadn't been back there in years. And Sarah said, "I want to tell you something that I've never told you before." And I realized that even after all this time, even after all this growth, there were still things we were discovering about each other. She said, "When I was a kid, my parents had this relationship where they never fought. They just lived in this cold politeness. And I watched my mom disappear into that politeness. She stopped having opinions. She stopped wanting things. She just became this small version of herself. And I swore I would never do that. I swore I would never disappear into a marriage. But then that's exactly what I did. I became small. I disappeared. Because I was so afraid of being abandoned that I abandoned myself first. I made sure I wasn't worth staying for by making sure I wasn't fully present to be stayed for." I held her hand across the table. I said, "Thank God you reached out to Rebecca that day. Thank God I stood in that hallway. Because if I hadn't heard you, I don't know if we would have made it." She said, "We might have made it. But we would have made it apart. We would have both survived the divorce and we would have both moved on. But something would have been missing forever. The knowledge that we could have been this. That we could have fought for this. That we could have chosen each other." A year later, we took a trip to Mexico. Just the two of us. No work. No distractions. Just time to be together. And on our last night there, sitting on the beach watching the sunset, Sarah said something that changed how I understood everything that had happened. She said, "I'm so grateful for every single moment of pain we went through. Because that pain was what taught us how to actually love each other. If things had been easy, if we'd never had to fight, we would never have discovered how deep this could go. We would never have learned how to be truly honest with each other." That's when I understood something that I wish I'd understood years earlier. Marriage isn't about finding someone who makes you happy. Marriage is about finding someone you're willing to be honest with. Someone you're willing to show your true self to, even when that means being vulnerable. Someone you're willing to fight for, even when fear is telling you to give up. The divorce papers that I'd thrown on the fireplace became a metaphor for us. They represented the ending I was so convinced was inevitable. They represented the fear that had convinced me we were finished. And by refusing to sign them, by choosing instead to listen, by choosing instead to fight, I chose a completely different ending. Here's what I want you to understand. This story isn't about a marriage that was saved at the last moment. It's about two people who finally decided to fight. It's about two people who stopped being afraid of being honest. It's about two people who understood, finally, that love isn't something that happens to you. It's something you do. It's something you choose every single day. So here's what I'm asking you to do tonight. If you're in a relationship that's gone quiet, if you're in a relationship where you've stopped being honest, if you're in a relationship where fear has built walls between you, I want you to do something brave. I want you to break that silence. I want you to say the thing you've been too afraid to say. And if you're married to someone who's been trying to reach you, if you're married to someone who's been pushing back against your walls, I want you to understand something. They're doing that because they believe you're worth fighting for. They're doing that because they haven't given up on you yet. So don't let them give up. Reach back. Meet them halfway. Choose to believe that this marriage is worth saving. Because the couples that make it aren't the ones who never have problems. They're the ones who decide that their love for each other is bigger than their fear. They're the ones who choose honesty over safety. They're the ones who choose to fight. I was ready to end my marriage. I had the papers printed. I had the date set. I was ready to give up. But one open door, one conversation I wasn't supposed to hear, that's all it took to change everything. That's all it took to remind me that the person I loved more than anything was still in there. Still fighting. Still hoping. Still believing that we could find our way back to each other. And thank God I listened.